Everybody ready? Okay. All right, good evening. We'll call the meeting to order, and I'd invite all of you to join the board in a moment of silence and hope for healing for our friends and neighbors in Oxford following the horrific events of November 30th. Thank you very much. Now we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, Mrs. McLean. May I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Need.
Here.
Mrs. McGinnis.
Here.
Mrs. Crane.
Here.
Ms. Catalina.
Here.
Mr. Heyer.
Here.
Mrs. Egan.
Here.
Mrs. Horst.
Here. This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community hearing. There is time for public participation as indicated in agenda items 3 and 9 during the meeting. Item 2 is approval of the consent agenda. May I have a motion, please?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Item 3 is citizens' request to address the board. Under item 3, you are given 2 opportunities to address the board. Under 3.1, you can request to address the board on any topic that's on tonight's agenda. And under item 9, you are welcome to address the board on any topic. When making comments, please state your name and address and direct your comments to Mrs. Kelly Horst, President. Each person may speak for up to 2 minutes per our bylaws, and per established procedures, the board does not respond to questions or interact with the speaker during public comment. And as we have returned to our boardroom tonight, the sign-up sheet is over here on the table. And so we will go ahead and collect that. If I can get Mrs. McLean to run that up to me and see if there is anyone that would like to address the board on an agenda item tonight. And obviously you will still have time to sign up to address the board at item 9 if an agenda item is not your area of interest. And please realize that speakers are limited to those who follow the correct procedure which is indicated on the sign-up sheet. Thank you, Mrs. McLean. Sorry. Great. Okay, all of these topics fall under item 9, so we will hear from you at that time. And we will continue on with our meeting. Item 4 is Superintendent Update. I'll turn it over to Dr. Ryan.
Thank you, President Horst. For our community this evening, I have several important updates, obviously very topical over the last several weeks and over the last several years for some of them. First and foremost, our hearts, I know I speak for our Board of Education, our entire school community goes out to the Oxford community as they have an ongoing struggle to continue to find their way back. We're here to support them. We're looking to reach out. We want to continue the ties that we have between our two very close-knit communities. And we want to look at it as an opportunity to do what we can as a community to give back. And I see that with our staff, with our community. I see that with the reaching out in terms of supports that we've tried in any way possible to help Oxford at this time. And I just want to let them know from our community to theirs that we're behind them, that they're in our thoughts and prayers. And we're going to continue to reach out as they go towards their recovery. To that end, I know it's also a very important topic for our community in terms of peace of mind and asking those questions. How can we in Clarkston make sure we're as safe as possible on a daily basis for my children who go to Clarkston schools and all the other children within our community? And I look at it as, first and foremost, that this has been a work in progress for years. School violence, even though this is traumatizing and as close as it happened in Oxford, has been something that in Clarkston we've worked on in a multi-pronged way, as the board knows, and to make sure that we remind our community that whether it's our facilities, which through the last bond, we started those concentric rings or zones of defense within our buildings. We upgraded all the doors. As many of you know, that we also have the extra door locking mechanisms, which we're evaluating even further. But I think many of the community don't realize that even that simple thing, where you look at, you know, an industrial door we put in Clarkston classrooms, they're over $1,000 a door in terms of the machinery and tolerances to them. They're, you know, there's not simply an overnight fix to a lot of these items, and it's something that in our facilities we've worked hard over the years to provide those extra layers. We've looked at the angles of threat assessment in cooperation with our local law enforcement as an important facet. And as late as this past week, our entire administrative team met with elements of Independence and Springfield Township law enforcement to review over our communication and command and control strategies and protocols to make sure that the communication between us and them is extraordinarily tight and will stay that way. And I think many of our community know over the last 5 years that we've done a tremendous investment in mental health within our classrooms across the district and buildings. We stand out as a school district that has social workers in every building, general education and special education social workers, which is an area where we believe mental health is an important component of overall not only welfare for our students, but overall school safety, and making sure that we're staying top and supporting all kids and their needs from when they come to us in pre-K all the way through post-high. We look at the protocols that our staff is trained in and knowledgeable in terms of ALICE training, as many in the community have heard out there in the popular news, something that we've instituted years ago, and we continue to stay abreast in making sure that we have all preparedness in that way. All these things being said, I'll be the first to step up and say, I want to see more. I want to see a higher level of safety within our buildings, even past what we've already been able to instill and install and support to this point. I, for one, though, am not one to recommend or advocate that we rush willy-nilly in different directions to do things that might make us feel like we're safer, but really have no test in terms of overall integration into the systems we have, and ones that will truly make us safe. And to me, there's experts that, whether you're talking about mental health or facilities or protocols that we have in our threat assessments, that can evaluate what we're currently doing in Clarkston. And I've already, with support of our Board of Education, empowered our team to begin the work through Stacy Steopoulos. I'll appoint her in the crowd who's working with the team to review all our threat assessment processes, while simultaneously with myself and Mr. Lucido working with the Oakland County Sheriff's Department to review to make sure that those are integrated again. We're also looking to review overall that facilities piece, and as opposed to just get the next best thing out of the box, Mr. Lucido is working directly with our Safety and Security Committee within this district that has already met to start plans to gain perspective and advice from security experts countrywide and also as part of the Oakland County Sheriff's Department. My directive to that is that I want every ounce, every building, every classroom, and the specifications that we have within our buildings to be reviewed. And I want to know how we can do it better. What can we do more based on what we already have? How can we integrate it based on expertise and be even a stronger secure environment than we currently have? That's not something you flip the switch at night when you Google it on the internet. Again, there's experts in these school safety aspects that will be advising Clarkston, and we will be coming back to the Board of Education in the second meeting in January that I hope to have mid-January to have a full report out on that. We're going to come to our community with a updated plan in terms of safety and security. I believe it from all the feedback that I received immediately that the desire is, again, we up the game even further than what we currently have. So whether it's the mental health aspects, whether it's the facilities, whether it's our protocols for threat assessment and communication with the Oakland County Sheriff, which every threat, I should remind our community, every threat that we have come across is copied to our law enforcement resource officers and the Oakland County Sheriff overall. Multiple people are contacted when we have that. And we don't let any of those threats go uninvestigated or are out there. I mean, that's just a practice Clarkston has had and we're going to continue to do. All these things, to me, integrate as an overall process to keep a high level of safety and give us new avenues to even improve further from there. So with the different groups that I have already started work, my plan again is to come back in January with an updated, revised set of recommendations. And at that time, I hope our community will have an opportunity to weigh in on them. And our Board of Education can provide some direction and support and input on all those areas. To me, again, to do just one thing like clear backpacks or rush out to install metal detectors or something like that is not an integrated plan. That's not how security works. It's an integrated process and involves different levels with a lot of expertise. And I feel like our community deserves that kind of level of expertise to be applied to what we're going to be doing. So in all those areas, we're going to be, again, upping our game. This week to that end also that we're going to have a preliminary communication of what I'm expressing to you tonight. I know not everybody tunes in to the Clarkson Board of Education meetings, so we will be communicating out that before the holiday recess so our families and our community can know what to expect as we move forward. I think it's critical that we do this in a thoughtful way, and we do it in a way that really acknowledges the quality that we've done so far. Secondly, as you know, having students back, not only in Oxford, but here, looking at the impact that it's had on our students, we've been working with trauma experts, Dr. Jim Henry from Western Michigan University, both with our counseling and social work staff and with our administrators, to begin looking at how we continue to unpack what happened, how that impacted and affected both our staff and students, and how we can support them moving forward. We don't believe good mental health and the aftermath of these things happens by accident. Recovery happens through a thoughtful way of supports and a community coming together to really look at a way that nobody who might be struggling, because people will take this all different ways over the next several days, weeks, and months, that we're there to support them. So that's a big part of what I'm looking at as we come forward as well. So more news will be coming on that. I just want our community to know that Clarkson will do it in a thoughtful, pragmatic way, and that we will move forward, and based on the input from our community, we will get traction, and there will be changes and improvements on already what we've already been able to bring to bear. The second update has to do with COVID. Obviously something that we've been living with now for going on 2 years. Our latest update is, I'm sure many have followed in the news media that Michigan is part of a current surge right now in cases, and that as I reported at our last meeting, we saw a pretty marked pickup in the total number of positive cases around Thanksgiving, which was in the neighborhood of about 160 active cases. I'm happy to, if that can be a way to describe it, to report tonight that has been almost, or actually more than cut in half right now in terms of active cases being in the mid-70s, and that we're going to continue to follow. It seems like there's been a trend. Not being a scientist or have any specific reason to be able to tell why we've seen that downward trend, could be related to the vaccinations that are now available in the younger population. Could be that it's just kind of made its way through our community. But either way, we'll continue to monitor it. We managed to get through this part of the pandemic with a very low overall number of quarantines that have been instituted in support. We notified, but as far as families taking kids out of school, and I think overall the level of quality of education based on contact has been strong. And I give a lot of credit to our staff, every last custodian, teacher, bus driver, administrator, aide, parapro, counselor, social worker that has kind of showed up and helped make it work through all that. Obviously, as you can tell just even by the update so far, the layers of trial and tribulation and sacrifice and blood, sweat, and tears that have gone into kind of continue to keep our operations moving forward is a testament to our entire crew. And I just want to say publicly thank you for our entire staff, over 1,000 individuals coming together to try to make this happen every single day. So that would be another important component. And then I just want to look at it, take stock, as I tried to communicate to our community this past Friday, that we still have much to be thankful for. We're very blessed as a community. And I look out to the individuals as we go towards the holidays. Take stock in your lives, take stock in your families, take stock in our community. And as we look to kind of push forward together, we still have, as I said, many things to be thankful for. So thank you, President Horst.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ryan. We'll move on to presentation items. We have one presentation tonight. We'll turn it over to Mr. Lucido for our annual pupil accounting update.
Good evening. I'm going to go through, it's an annual presentation we do that just shows where we're headed and trending with our pupil enrollment. So I want to define some of these abbreviations so you know what we're referring to. When we say CCS, that is referring to our brick and mortar students, which means those are the students who are actually showing up for school every day in our buildings. The CCSV, that is the Clarkston Virtual Program. That is the program we created right when COVID hit, that we put in place so our parents would have an option that did not feel comfortable sending their kids to school. And then RVS, that is another part of our virtual program, but that is for students who are outside of Clarkston, and it's just different curriculum and it runs a little bit different, but we feel it's important to break those out. And then shared time, for those of you who don't know, shared time is partnerships that we have with private schools where we send teachers in to teach non-core classes. And this is something that we've been doing for years, and I think right now we're the third largest in the state that provides these services. And though that programming has a 10% cap each year. So this first slide, it just kind of shows the movement of these different programs. If you see the blue line, which is our Clarkston community, that's our brick and mortar, you'll see that huge dip because we had a massive movement during COVID out of our brick and mortar buildings into virtual. That was extremely challenging staffing wise, but it was something we were able to pull off for our community, but you'll see that it went right back up this year. So we had a lot of staff movements over the last 24 months to accommodate that movement. That was, if you see, it's over 1,100 students that moved and then moved back. So you got to think every time that we do that, roughly, you got to think about 30 students equals a teacher that had to have a whole new assignment for the year. So I just want to commend our teaching staff. They were very gracious in all the new assignments that they've had over this time period. And then the Renaissance Virtual, that program has seen growth. We're up 262, and then our shared time programming is up as well. All in all, I'm sorry. So all in all, we are up 395, but a lot of those students are some of the programming that's outside of the district. So technically, when I added all this up, we were down like 22 brick and mortar students. But actually, that's, over the year, I can't remember the last year we didn't lose more than 100 students. So it was kind of happy to see when we sorted all these numbers out. This slide just breaks down how many students we have in per grade level per programming that we have. In this slide, this separates out an FTE versus a head. So we are compensated, school districts in Michigan, they get funding per FTE that they have. And really what I want to highlight on this is if you look at our shared services, the shared services heads versus the FTEs that we have, the amount of heads that we have to record in our people accounting system and account for, it's 5,384. But when you look at the FTEs that we get, it is way smaller. That's because we're only able to count a fraction of the student for when they're actually in that non-core class. So I'm glad Chris DeFonce is here this evening because she's here for an approval, but this is just a tremendous amount of work that goes into this. There's almost as many pupils in our shared service programming as we have in our Clarkston brick and mortar building. So it's a ton of work that Krista does with a really small team. This is our key group. Key subgroup enrollment. We've been tracking this for years. I don't see any significant movements or any concerns with these numbers. But this is basically tracking our free and reduced, our ESL population, and our special ed. Our ESL did spike a little bit, and we did add FTE earlier in the year to accommodate their needs. This is our attrition data. This is tracking where students who leave Clarkston go to another, whether they're going to another district, they're moving out of state, and this is the information that we know on students who actually report that information to us. And this is the new students that come to Clarkston. We track this information too. The only thing that sticks out to me on this is the movement we've had from homeschool back into our district, and that makes sense with COVID and how things have improved, that students would want to come back to face-to-face instruction. And on this slide, this is where we study the size of the classes, like if it changes over a time period. So with the exception of 17-18, we haven't really seen huge swings in these numbers, but we're going to continue to track this data and see if we see any trends. So this is our total enrollment, and I'll give you a second to kind of absorb. I won't read all of this out loud to you, but when we include our post-high and our early childhood center, now when I say early childhood center, I'm talking about the special ed FTEs at the early childhood center that aren't tuition-based. But when we include them in our post-high students, we're up total FTE-wise for the year of 413.43. So, and this slide breaks down our school of choice programming. So currently, as of this year, we had 40 new students that we've taken in this year. We currently have 242 school of choice students. So we've increased by 40 for this year. And those are the programs. So we have IB, our advanced studies, our career immersion pathways, construction tech, CSM tech, and then our young fives in kindergarten we've been doing for a few years, and our employee non-resident programming. And this slide studies our capture rate of the Oakland County burst for Clarkston Community Schools. So if you see down there, it's projecting where we're going to be for the next 3 years. So if we use an average going forward, we're looking at 585 kindergartners for next year, 604, 572. And that's basically looking at birth rates and how many historically we've been able to capture. And if you look down at the bottom left, we've been right about 4.5 for the last 15 years. So we've been doing very good. Recently, we get updated studies from Plant Moran, and we use them to assist us with the historical data that we track. And while I was working with them, they provided me with some great information. And basically, like Clarkston is one of the school districts in the state. We get roughly about 90% of the students who live in Clarkston go to Clarkston schools. And they shared some other facts with me, like Birmingham, Bloomfield average around 25, Rochester was around 80%. So it was just really telling how much buy-in there is from our parents and how large of a percentage actually go to Clarkston schools that live here. So this has been a good tool. It's been fairly accurate over the years for us. And this is a summary. And basically, we've had a gain of 1,139.54 this year. But we also lost 1,106.71 students from our virtual. And then our virtual programs gained 267. That's the Renaissance Virtual, and then 154 through our shared service programming. So our net FTE is 413.43 for this year. And if we didn't have these extra programs that we were doing, like with Krista's program and Ken Janzerik's, we'd be down 22 FTEs. And when you take that number and multiply it times how much we get per pupil, it ends up being a significant amount of money that these extra programmings and extra work that we put in, it pays off financially. And we're going to continue monitoring this for our budgeting cycle. It's hard to think about next year already, but this is the time that we do that. We're going to be preparing for our staffing levels and so forth, and using this pupil enrollment data is what we're going to use. We're going to continue our special programming. One day hopefully we'll be able to grow more than 10% with our shared service, but right now that seems very probable that we'll be able to do that and hopefully experience some more growth in our virtual programs. And we're going to look for other opportunities to bring extra revenue to Clarkston Community Schools. Any questions?
Any questions or discussion? Ms. McGinnis?
I just have an observation comment. When I'm looking at the capture rate slide versus the student by grade K-12 fall 2021, I like the trend that I'm seeing. I like the trend of current kindergarten level, kindergarten and young 5 at 583, and prior years at 464. When you look at the 3 prior years there, they were all down cycle years. Mm-hmm. And you look at those last year and this, or I'm sorry, first grade and this year, they're up cycle years, and you compare that to the capture rate slide that you showed based on the percentages on the county birth rates, and you show that our numbers are going up, which is really good for us because we have recognized we've been in a downswing for population decline, which is drastically affects, you know, our programming and a lot of other things. So I'm really glad to see that it looks like the trend is going back up. It looks like we might have a 3-4 year trend down, a 3-4 year trend up, and so it looked like we're on an upward trend.
I agree.
Any other questions or discussion? I mean, I had a note, you know, at the beginning, when you broke that out, and I'm glad you defined that for us. And I had some notes just from previous discussions we've had and looking at some of our board priorities that we established last summer, and we wanted to be, you know, kind of a little more long-term when we talked about budgeting and planning and take a little more strategic view. So I think, board, am I right in thinking these are the kinds of categories we want to look at when we were talking about, you know, revenues, costs, types of students? These really are the categories, right, in terms of, you know, the finances that are associated with these types of students. Is this, I mean, this is what I thought of when I saw this presentation tonight. So I think when we start the budgeting process after the first of the year, this is kind of our basis for when we're looking at money associated with these types of students. Is that a fair thing to say? Am I right there?
I think you're right on. I think
Okay.
if we look at it in these categories, we can look at enrollment more of a holistic
Yeah.
number rather than, it's very hard to process when it's, you know, minus 100 here, plus 125 here, plus 150 here, plus 5 here. You know, it's very hard to wrap our head around a trend. And so when we look at it, when the whole, you say, hey, we're up 400 FTEs, great. Like, we can understand that, we can budget for that, we can plan for that, we'll see what the trend is next year. I think we still want to look at the categories to know what made up that number, but from a budget parameter standpoint, I think we can have one enrollment parameter and one state aid parameter, and that'll simplify our projection process significantly.
Okay.
Madam President,
Mm-hmm.
I
Ms.
would
McGinnis.
only suggest that I wouldn't mind seeing, and we could follow it up in the weekend review, the middle school numbers. Even though they're not school of choice, I would like to see how that programming is working out.
In what way? I'm sorry, please clarify.
The cost versus the revenue that comes along with it,
Of the middle school.
right? Middle school, college.
Middle college, okay.
college.
It's some of those other things that we've done.
Correct.
Okay. Early college and,
Early
okay,
college.
thank you.
Couple thoughts even related to this, to our board, that was kind of some good insights by the collective team that I give credit to, is the decision to keep the virtual school open and strong as we went into this year, when many school districts in our area decided to close theirs down and push every student back into brick and mortar. Our idea was initially just to try to provide another level of choice for Clarkson students, and it had a huge interest from surrounding districts where that wasn't an opportunity and they wanted to pursue it. And just by the novelty and the business minded of the team that Krista runs, in terms of how aggressive they are in recruiting new shared partnership schools and looking at different ways that we can offer consulting services and other things to really continue to help the Clarkston bottom line for the students that are Clarkston kids that go to school here every single day. So it's been, you know, looking at school districts around where they're losing students, you know, overall, and we have a number, it's over 400 in terms of pickup. That's significant. And to be within the top couple players in the entire state of Michigan in terms of that business minded, you know, is definitely to the credit of the entire team there. So thank you, Mr. Lucido.
All right, thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to action items. 6.1 is approval of personnel changes. May I have a motion, please?
I move that the Board of Education approves the personnel changes as listed on the attached sheets.
Support.
Are there any questions or discussion? No? And I know we had one introduction that I'd asked Mr. Lucido to make because we didn't get to do that when we were in the other building.
Yep, I would just like to introduce our new Director of Marketing and Community Relations, Kelly Allen.
Yeah.
Good evening, Board of Education and Superintendent Ryan. I am absolutely thrilled to be a part of the Clarkston Community Schools. This district has always had an amazing reputation, and it has absolutely lived up to that. It has been a interesting time filled with ups and downs. It is something that I have been familiar with being in this profession for some time, but it has been great to have such a wonderful team to work with. Coming in and having that support and collaboration right out the gate has made this a very easy transition. It has been wonderful. To give a little bit of background about myself, I came from Waterford School District. Previous to that, in a very similar position, I was in L'Anse Cruz out in Macomb County. And before that, I was with Local 4 News for about 10 years. So I have an interesting mix around my profession, but it helps me to make good decisions and help when we get caught with many different things happening at the same time. Multitasking is a big part of this job. Another piece that I think is really important to mention is this is my first opportunity to come into a district that had such a strong foundation. Mary Ellen Rowe did a great job, and it is my honor to continue that work and to improve upon that. And she has been just an absolute pleasure to help me as well in this transition. So thank you very much. I truly appreciate being here. Clarkston's been great to me so far, and I'm looking forward to many more years of wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Allen. Welcome. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to see you when we formally approved you a couple of months ago when we were in the high school. So I wanted the opportunity for the board to get to see you and welcome you. Thank you so much. We have a motion and a support to approve the personnel report. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Item 6.2 is approval of furniture purchase for the shared time program. May I have a motion, please?
I move the Board of Education approves the purchase of furniture from Creative Office Interiors Incorporated for $42,500 as presented.
Support.
Are there any questions or discussion? I know Ms. Fons is here. And I think we have the documentation here in our packet. Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. Item 6.3 is approval of broadcast system purchase for Independence Television Video Center. May I have a motion, please?
I move the Board of Education approves the purchase of a new broadcast system from Key Code Media in the amount not to exceed $32,000 as presented.
Any questions or discussion? And Mr. Heyer, I'm assuming you can tell us if this has already happened on the ITV side?
This item was approved by the Video Center Board, and because it exceeds the purchase limit and Clarkson Schools is the fiduciary, we have to approve it here as well. But this is a budgeted part of equipment replacement, and this is one of the great parts of the partnership that we have, is that we always will have the latest equipment as our needs grow and expand. So there are a number of technical advantages to this piece of equipment, both in quality and HD and storage space, that make this a good win for our community, our schools, our kids, our ability to, record meetings like this one, games, student projects, community projects, all the above.
Great. Any other questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Item 7 is report items. 7.1 is our monthly finance report. Mrs. Rogers.
The current monthly financial report, I gave you 2 months worth, October and November, so we could close those 2 months out before we head for the holiday break. So as of November 30th, 2021, your budget to actual revenues are just under 30%, and your budget to actual expenditures are just over 30%. And the fund equity looks like it dropped, but that's just timing of getting revenue booked and timing of, we're still waiting on some federal revenue and some ISD revenue approvals that we've spent the money, we just aren't getting the revenue yet. Should start seeing that revenue coming in January and February, and then that won't probably look as low as it is. So we're still trending to head into a surplus school year with the federal one-time money. So do you have any questions on any of the check registers or any of the 2 months worth of data?
The board, as she said, there are 2 months worth of reports in here. Are there any questions for Mrs. Rogers? Lots of pages of reports. All right. I see no questions for Mrs. Rogers on the financials. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Item 8 is discussion items. 8.1 is our first reading of policies. Mrs. Egan is our policy committee chair this year. I will let you lead us through a discussion on the policies in front of us.
Thank you, Mrs. Horst. Mrs. Crane, Mrs. McLean, and Superintendent Ryan and I met with the new Neola rep, who is also, I guess, acting superintendent in Goodrich, and he took us through our new board packet. And in the first packet, we've already revised and approved the bylaw changes that were required. So we moved on to employment of professional staff. This is policy 3120, and basically the language is being updated. We're eliminating the highly qualified wording, any language associated with that. This is an update to the certification and licensure statutes and regulations. So that language has just been updated for legal purposes. And I did not receive any questions regarding that ahead of time. Policy 5722, school-sponsored publications and productions. And this is one that we deferred to Dr. Ryan to take forward to the admin staff to look at things like playbills and anything that publishes some of our student information. So we'll be addressing that one probably in January. Policy 6114, cost principles. This is basically just tightening up the language in terms of any of the federal grant money that we receive. When we get these monies, we just have to be very careful in terms of tracking and how we're using these funds. So this is tightening up the language in terms of what you can and cannot do with federal funding. This falls under a lot of the elementary and secondary school emergency relief funding. Policy 6152, student fees, fines, and supplies. This policy has been revised to provide the authorization to allow us for online payments for any fees, fines, and charges. Pretty straightforward. And policy 7450, property inventory. This is just some drafting updates, noting that the federal threshold of $5,000 for differentiating between supplies and materials and capital expenditures for equipment purchases. And we talked a little bit about in policy committee that we do keep a pretty robust inventory list, and it's ongoing. We don't just do it annually or a minimum of every 2 years. So that was just an update. Policy 8310 and 8320, these two policies work together a little bit. These are policies that are regarding student and staff files. So the policies have been revised to comply with the obligation not to disclose the address of a student, for instance, or an employee who provides the district with any notice that they want that information kept private. And that's just a high-level view of our policies that we discussed at our last meeting.
Thank you. Were
Were there any other questions?
I know I submitted a question and asked if you would clarify this with Neola, and this is an incredible pet peeve of mine as a writer and as someone who oversees a board of an educational institution, but there were some grammatical errors in some of these policies, and it frustrates me to no end. So I just asked if you would clarify that with Neola for me, well, for all of us, and then we can figure out where to go from there. But I don't think there should be grammatical errors in our policy. So I thank you for agreeing to follow up on that. Were there any other questions or discussion on the policies at this time?
All right.
Okay.
We'll be back for second reading.
All right. So thank you. I look forward to those replies. Okay. We'll move on to item 9, citizen comments. Citizens are welcome to address the board on any topic at this point on the agenda. And Mrs. McLean, if we can see if anyone else has signed up to address the board. I do have to address the citizens who signed up earlier. We have procedures in place for those who wish to address the board. And I stated earlier that we only recognize those who follow our procedures. So of the 5, thank you very much. Okay, of the 6 people who have requested to address the board, only 1 has followed the proper procedure. And so at this point, I need to ask those of you who have signed up if you would like to amend your request, because right now only 1 person is going to be recognized tonight to address the board. So if you would like to come, I can hand the sheet back to Mrs. McLean, and you can correct the sign-in sheet, and that will be your choice. So otherwise, I have 1 citizen who, yep, okay. So we have name, address, and agenda topic are required. That is our procedure. And if you are willing to do that, then I am happy to call on you. The board absolutely wants to hear from you. If you would do that, please. And then we can get to our citizens' comments. Mrs. Giampatroni, you're good to go. So let me also remind you, as I have done for the last several months, that calling out individuals in this forum is inappropriate in a way that fosters personal attacks. So anyone who does engage in criticism or personal attack of an individual by name or any other way that identifies that individual will be stopped, and their remarks will cease. So please keep your remarks and attention directed up here and to the full board. Those individuals' rights are protected by the Open Meetings Act. Any employees or agents of the board have a right to hear complaints against them in private and in a closed session. So please be aware of that. I know a couple of you have signed up to address the board on an individual employee. If those are positive remarks, we are happy to hear it. If those are going to be negative in nature or of a complaint, this is not the forum to do that. There are other ways to address that. So just be warned that if those remarks take a negative turn, you will be stopped and unable to continue your remarks. Okay. I still have one person on a second sheet I don't have a full name and address for. I'll put that aside. Mrs. McLean, I'm going to hand this to you if this person would like to complete this. That's fine. We'll get to it in a minute. Okay, so we will begin with Murphy Aspinall. And so if you'll approach the microphone and please state your name and address, and you'll have 2 minutes to address the board.
Hello, my name is Murphy Aspinall. I live at 7701 Knowles Drive, Waterford, Michigan, and I'm a student at Clarkson Junior High. Recently, a teacher from Clarkson Junior High was forced to leave, and his name was Mr. Kreider. Mr. Kreider was my biology teacher. He put up a rainbow flag in his classroom, and a student complained about it to the office. Mr. Kreider was told to take down the rainbow flag, and he did.
I'll tell you what, excuse me one sec. If you could just look right into the microphone. We're just having a little bit of a hard time hearing you, and since you're here, we want to make sure we hear what you have to say.
Is this better?
That's much better. Thank
Okay.
you so much.
Mr. Kreider was my biology teacher. He put up a rainbow flag in his classroom, and a student complained about it to the office. Mr. Kreider was told to take down the rainbow flag, and he did. When students asked where it went, Mr. Kreider told his classes that he was told to take it down. I asked my principal, Mr. Kern, why he was told to take the rainbow flag down. I asked if there was any way that we could have the rainbow flag up. Mr. Kern told me that Clarkson's lawyers advised him to take the rainbow flag down. While I understand legal liabilities may dictate what can be hung up in school grounds, I also understand that other school districts in Michigan have rainbow flags up in classrooms, offices, and cafeterias. In my experience throughout my 10 years in Clarkson schools, I've been told by staff members and principals alike that Clarkson does not tolerate bullies. I have seen that Clarkson not only tolerates it, Clarkson turns a blind eye to it or even excuses it. Mr. Carter was a teacher who wouldn't sit around and watch children be threatened, bullied, harassed, and harmed every day in a hostile learning environment. He acted to make students feel safe and accepted. When I reported bullying to staff, I was asked if I thought the boys were making jokes that they believed I found funny. I was asked what I did to let the boys know that were bullying me, that I knew that it wasn't a joke. I don't think being harassed is a joke. No investigation was done at all. By removing a teacher like Mr. Carter, Clarkson has rewarded and sided with bullies. You may claim that your school district does not tolerate bullying, but your actions say you clearly do.
Thank you so much for your comments. Next, we have Christy Giampatroni.
Hi, my name is Christy Giampatroni with 15 Walden Road. As we all know, our school has been facing a lot of challenges lately, and many other districts have as well. It brings to light 4 things that I think that we need. We need wisdom, we need fathers, we need tough love, and discipline. Many of us have been praying for wisdom, and God tells us in His Word to fear Him above all things, Proverbs 9:10. That's the beginning of wisdom. Second, we have many great leaders in our school and wonderful principals at the head of each school. And I think what we need is the role of the father to rise up out of each of them. A father corrects a child in whom he delights, which leads to the third point. A father does this because of love. Proverbs 3:12. The Lord corrects those He loves, just as a father corrects a child in whom he loves. And I know our school loves our kids and our staff. I just think that we need to get our priorities straight, because we've been really nice, but not really loving. Love knows how to set boundaries. Love knows how to say no. Love is not a feeling, it's a choice. But we make those choices because we fear God. And we know in the long run, it's the best.
Thank you so much for your comments. Next, we have Addie Hubbard.
Hi, I'm Addie Hubbard, and I live at 10366 Andersonville Road. I have become concerned with the lack of compatibility in regards to truly implementing student safety, or at least the safety of students that don't fit a bill of perceived bias that members here seem to have towards students that don't fit their norm. This is of course in regards to the happenings involving Mr. Carter and how you blatantly refuse to accept or take responsibility for your actions, dismissing them as necessary, when it appeared to us at least that it was only damage control to appease the primarily conservative basis of Clarkson without taking the non-conservative group into consideration. I created a petition to float around social media for people to sign if they agreed that Mr. Carter was not in the wrong whatsoever, and that he didn't deserve what happened. As of 6 p.m. today, there were 144 signatures. In his classroom, there were many notes on the whiteboard to Mr. Carter from students saying, "We miss Carter" and "Best teacher." A lot of students looked up to him, and he was a huge role model to many. In conclusion, your actions in regards to Mr. Carter seems to be dismissive of your words, inclusivity to all students in the building, as well as your promises of equal value and respect. These words do fall short of being in the eyes of many, as many LGBTQIA+, colored, and non-athlete students do receive unequal treatment, as if they are viewed as lesser. Thank you for your time and effort with listening. I appreciate any and all thoughts toward this ongoing problem in our community.
Thank you very much for your comments tonight. Next, we have Tim Parkin.
Tim Parkin. I can be traced to 9100 Michigami Road. If Clarkston parents were to study the Oakland Schools DEI training videos as I did, it wouldn't take long to discover some facts that were left out of last month's DEI presentation. Oakland County's DEI consultant denounces sameness and the melting and American melting pot. Our children are taught it's okay to be colorblind. Yet the school board sat silent last month while receiving praise from parents who were duped into believing Clarkston children were being taught to become colorblind through DEI training. He quotes his mentor, Dr. Bettina Love, and encourages students to become social justice accomplices and co-conspirators, and to be willing to put their lives on the line for DEI and equity. He further encourages our students to get into trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble, quoting the late John Lewis. While Oakland County grieves over recent school tragedies, here at Clarkston we are weaponizing our kids to become troublemaking, co-conspiring kamikazes for equity. Clearly, no one on this board has stood up to this individual and denied him access to our educators and students. Your consultant, an African American, claims Americans' dominant white culture benefits from unearned privileges, yet never once mentions his six-figure salary funded by Oakland County's 77% white taxpayers. It's DEI for thee, but not for me, as his daughters attend predominantly white, elite private schools instead of the very schools where he teaches. Character is what you do when no one is looking. It would be outrageous to ask our superintendent, Dr. Marks, to forego their six-figure salary.
Thank you so much for your comments.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next, we have Justin Murdoch.
Justin Murdoch, Independence Township, 3681 Snow Apple. Good evening, members of this diverse board. I'm here to sincerely thank you tonight. I explained to my wife all the stats and personal experiences as for why I've always leaned toward educating our children in a private or homeschool setting while she wanted to send her kids to her alma mater of Clarkston. But it was your actions that convinced her to feel the same way that I do. And your contribution to Oakland County's increase in private and homeschool enrollment for the past 2 years is commendable. I support the following that Clarkston has been doing. Please continue pushing diversity, inclusion, and equity, DIE. Clarkston families know you're definitely not disguising critical race theory with wordplay because you say you aren't, just like I didn't rearrange the letters in the acronym so it spells DIE. Ramp up the number of presentations your staff attends with Dr. Marks, along with taxpayer money you spend on them, so we can more swiftly indoctrinate the youth of this district with his racist and classist ideology while his kids are expensively and privately educated. And why reserve subpar benchmark achievement for academics? Have your athletic department do the same. Rather than focus on skill improvement or winning games, the football and basketball coaches, for example, could concentrate on things that have nothing to do with excellence, like skin color, sexuality, or socioeconomic status, and likely lower their team's proficiency to those of the ELA and math assessments. If you aren't already doing so, you can allow boys to begin replacing girls in female sports and use their locker rooms and bathrooms, and let the male teachers do so also for inclusionary reasons. Please keep ignoring science and data, remain defiant of Michigan school code, and continue forcing masks upon your subjects. In addition, please implement COVID-19 vax requirements as soon as possible. Don't wait for the government mandate, just do it. And lastly, for tonight, you've surely seen the negative risks that restorative practices pose, but you could just keep ignoring that and pressing on with it anyway. If you want to escalate the current trickle of families leaving CCS into mass exodus, I'll be happy to present them each month in the 2-minute allotment you've so graciously provided us. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mrs. McLean, was that other sheet updated? Okay. Item 10 is information items. Our next Board of Education meeting will be Monday, January 10th at 7 p.m. And right now, our plan is to remain here in our boardroom. Item 11 is a closed session for negotiations purposes, and following the closed session, we will just adjourn from there. There will be no more discussions or decisions made after that closed session. So may I have a motion, please, to move into closed session?
I move the Board of Education move into closed session for the purpose of collective bargaining negotiations.
Support.
May I have, Mrs. McLean, may I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Crane,
Yes.
Mrs. McGinnis,
Yes.
Mr. Heyer,
Yes.
Mrs. Egan,
Yes.
Ms. Catalina,
Yes.
Mr. Need,
Yes.
Mrs. Horst.
Yes. All right, the board is moving into closed session. I wish you all a very happy and safe holiday, and we'll see you in the new year.